We interrupt your regularly scheduled podcast programming to enter this important and urgent message about self-confidence because I know you need to hear it and I need to hear it. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Love in Progress podcast, where we deep dive into self-reflection and healing as a catalyst for better relationships and leadership. I am your host and educator, Neena, and I'm here to be a guide to you in that process. Let's get started. So yes, today on the podcast, we are jumping into a topic I think is quite pertinent in so many areas, in so many relationships of your life, and that is your self-confidence. Now, if you've been following me on social media, you know that I launched a new digital course this week called Empowered Pixie. And while I set out to create that course to help people with their pixie haircuts, to be able to choose a good style, to talk to their stylist, to be able to style it effectively, what I didn't anticipate was this draw that I had to speak instinctively and clearly around self-confidence and how that's an important and integral part of being a short-haired woman is that element of confidence to be able to wear it. And that is oftentimes the screener that keeps people from actually choosing a short haircut, even though they love it, they just don't think they can pull it off. And gosh, it got me thinking a lot about how many other areas we do this to ourselves. We feel excited and intrigued and curious about starting a new relationship or starting a new business or learning something new, whether that's through education or our vocational experience, just anything that's novice. And we're looking at it with the self-reflective, impeding belief that I can't do it. Like, it looks cool, but I'm not the one to do it. And it's really interesting because I will tell you that every mindset coach you have ever come across that knows anything at all is an effective mindset coach because they have been through it too. They have gone through the thick of the challenges that they help navigate you through, and I am certainly no exception to that. I actually had a self-confidence moment come up for me this week. And so I thought, we've got to stop our regularly scheduled podcast sequence here. And I've got to talk about this because if it's coming up for me right now, it's coming up in the digital course, it's coming up in my personal mentoring, it's got to be a collective message that needs to be shared right now. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about your personal self-confidence and how that's keeping you out of some beautifully new, expansive, elaborate, elevating experiences, and how you can help yourself through the process of increasing that self-confidence. Because here's what I do know. You likely have a couple of areas in your life that you do feel self-confident. And in fact, let's just dive right into the journaling. Grab a notebook and let's process this together. I want you to write down 1 to 2 areas in your life that you feel incredibly self-confident. Maybe that is in your organization skills, your home management skills. Maybe it's your communication skills. Maybe it is your emotional regulation skills. Maybe it is in your ability to learn new educational materials and research skills. I want you to just take a beat and let's sit in some gratitude and raise our vibration here for a second and help get some clarity on what you already feel self-confident in. Okay, now that you have a couple of things written down, I want you to articulate in that list why. Why do you feel self-confident in those things? Maybe it's because you feel like your skill acumen portrays that you're good at it. Maybe it's the feelings that you feel when you think about approaching that situation or challenge or problem in your life. Take a beat and write down why you find you've got self-confidence in this particular area. Okay, this kind of detective work is really key when we're honing in on what it is that we want to improve upon, especially when it comes to self-development. And with self-confidence, It's such a construct. It's such a personal belief system at play, because externally somebody could look at you and your habits and activities and say, oh yeah, you should be confident in that area because of XYZ proof. And yet you look at yourself and think, oh no, I am not self-confident in that area. So this is an aspect I'm going to touch on a little bit more later, but it's really important for us to understand and, more importantly, distinguish that self-confidence is just that. It's self. It's a perception of self that builds the confidence, not any sort of feedback that you can get from other people, which unfortunately we place way too much value on. So again, we'll talk on that in just a second. Why do you feel like you're good at that thing? It's a good question to ask yourself, because then you understand the measuring, the process of assessment that you personally offer to yourself when it comes to, am I skilled at this or am I not? Do I believe in myself or do I not? And why this is important to differentiate is because everything in our world related to self-analysis is coming through a filter or a lens of, am I enough? Am I enough? And when we look at confidence, especially, it's easy for us to nitpick. It's easy for us to self-abuse. It's easy for us to potentially self-put down because we see elements where we aren't perfect. And I would just want you to entertain the idea that when you hold yourself ransom with this lack of perfection, that you're instinctually impressing upon yourself that you are not enough. Now listen, Alison Faulkner said it best, enough is a decision, not an amount. You cannot be enough as in a quantity of something. It's just when you decide it's enough. And that's what I want to talk to you about. Self-confidence today, more than anything else, is a decision. A decision to say, right where I am, right now, at this sliver in time, I'm choosing to self-love. I'm choosing to have positive self-talk through the process. I'm choosing to self-trust. And I'm choosing that what decisions I make in the future will be in my best interest for that time. And that I can only hold myself accountable for the beliefs that I currently know and understand. And here's what I have found when it comes to self-confidence. If you have a little tinge of negative emotion, you know what that is? That is your conscious self in conflict with your higher self. Let me say that again. When you experience negative emotion, those ill feelings, ones of frustration, discouragement, what I call divine discontent, meaning where I am right now is not where I want to be. That is just your higher self speaking so loud in your ear saying, I don't think about you that way. All I think about, this is your higher self speaking to you, is how much I love you, how much I believe in you, how much I know you're doing your best with what you've got. And I know you're always on your way. You can't ever get it wrong. You are always enough. That's the message that our higher self, our source, that divine within us is always sharing. So when our conscious beliefs are contrary to that, it brings those yucky, discouraging feelings, ones that we oftentimes try to avoid. But here's the truth. Instead of avoiding it, say, what is my higher self believing about me right now that I'm not believing about myself? Oh, and you know what enters in? Self-grace. Every time. Every time. You can do the same thing when you're thinking ill of someone else. This must be different than what my higher, loving, wide perspective self is believing about this person. And then almost always the message that will come to your heart is they're doing the best they can. They're working from their own filters and their own belief structures and their own way of perceiving the world. And I'm going to have compassion for that now. The same goes when we're talking about self-confidence, which is really ultimately self-trust and a self-belief that you can do it, that you'll know what to do when you get there, that you can trust yourself. Powerful, isn't it? So now in our journaling exercise, let's talk about what areas still need some more confidence. Where are you seeing yourself as lacking when you know that higher self is seeing you as abundant and powerful and trustworthy? Take a second to write a couple of things down. Now, this is going to be part of your homework, because what we need to do here is we need to rewrite the self-talk and the self-trust around these particular areas so that you can start seeing yourself as someone who's competent in these areas. Now, listen, here's what I want to focus on for the last part of this podcast today. You cannot use the validation from other people to build your self-confidence. It's a formula that doesn't work. When you're looking for, seeking for, craving outside validation to help you feel confident about yourself, then you're going to just keep seeking it. You're going to be riding waves of other people's perceptions to help you feel steady. And I'm here to tell you it's never going to work. You cannot seek external validation for an internal problem. And I would also say an internal solution, because I know that higher self believes in you wholeheartedly. I know there's a bigger part of you, inside of you, that knows that you're incredibly competent, that there's nothing but self-love and self-trust there for you. But when we get conceptualizing it in the physical form, we find evidences that are contrary to it, and that's what brings the negative emotion. So if you find yourself wavering based on the feedback that you get from other people, it's time to halt. It's time to stop. It's time to self-reflect. It's time to practice meditation, stillness, slow that negative cycle of downward thinking towards self, and tune in. Tune into that loving, ever patient, ever grace giving higher self and say, help me. I'm offering my will right now to let go of what I think I need to believe about myself. And I want to embrace fully this ever flowing love and belief in myself right now that I know you feel. And that alignment is so sweet. It's so sweet. And I will tell you, this is something that hasn't come into my life until only recently. I've gone decades, almost 4 decades, looking for external validation, seeking relationships, seeking conversations, putting myself in a victim mentality so that somebody could come in and pat me on the back and say, you're doing a good job. It'll only work for a short season. And then you'll just be hurting again. There's no way for people to constantly be filling up your confidence cup. It's going to seem artificial, and you're just going to be seeking that next validation. You're going to be needy and codependent. And gosh, what if you're not surrounded by people that do buoy you up? You're going to feel pretty low. So what's the antidote? It's for you to step in and to be your biggest cheerleader. And maybe that comes with a little mitigation so that you can believe it. It's like, woo, yep, not quite there yet, but I'm on my way. And higher self, I know you're holding true to those beliefs that I'm anxious to hold inside of myself. And I know that when I release that physical belief that's bringing me conflict between what you believe and what I believe, that I can feel that love of myself and I can increase my confidence. So I want you to write down in your notes How does my higher self feel about me in this area? And let me give you some words. You're doing a great job. You can only move from the information you have. You're always on the way. You're always growing. And I believe in you every moment. I'm so proud of you. Keep going. There's so much love for you here. That goes for any area. You could use those kinds of mantras to completely elevate and change your belief structures and your mood. Here's what I know. When you continue to rewrite the script around how you think about yourself, that self-confidence will inevitably increase. It also will help you feel more resilient to the judgment of others because you're not out on the sea getting tossed around based on the feedback that you get from other people. You can say, okay, that's an interesting perspective, but I know who I am and I know where I stand and I self-trust. I have a strong self-belief. I offer self-grace and I know that I'm getting better every day. And finding that within, it's going to change the game. So listen, I know the importance of self-confidence. I've walked that road probably a few different times in my life, but very specifically over the last year or so. And I will tell you that, man, when you're not seeking the validation of other people to help determine your self-confidence, it's a whole nother game. You practice that self-grace. You also compliment yourself more easily. You see the potential in your own growth and you give yourself the space to progress. I know that when you stand in your own personal self-power, that confidence is just a byfactor of that. And I know that the world needs you to be your most confident self. It can be your superpower. And no, it is not under the contingency that you need to be perfect to be confident. Nobody is. So we'll release together the expectation to be perfect before we can be confident, to practice positive self-talk, one that's aligned with our higher self, and ultimately build that self-trust that we're always on our way. We're getting better, and that makes us more resilient. Listen, I believe in you, and I know how important self-confidence is in your daily mood and ultimately in your leadership and familial impact. This is a big one for you to put your oxygen mask on first, to help feel that self-validation above everything else, and ultimately to build that self-confidence that will help you show up as the true light you're meant to be in this world. Lastly, before we wrap up, I know sometimes when you're really struggling with self-confidence, it's hard to find the words. So I want to offer to you as a special podcast listener incentive, a free affirmations track that you can download on my website to be able to listen to every day to help you build your self-confidence. I literally took it out of my Empowered Pixie course and now is its own offering in my coursework. And if you use the word podcast as a promo code, you'll be able to get it for free. Thank you for listening. Thank you for investing in yourself. I want to help you in this way. So let's go be confident, shall we? I'm rooting for you today and every day, my friend. Don't forget to live well, look well, and be well. And I will see you on the next podcast.